Hot in, so hot in here. Another hot day for the Houston Texans offense. Back-to-back days where everybody is present. And we also look at who needs to perform well versus the New York Giants this Saturday. Cody, let's start the show.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to this Thursday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you to all of our first-time listeners and viewers. Welcome into our house, as we like to call the Texans crib. Just do us three favors. You can keep your shoes on. I hope your hands are washed. But please subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. And thank you to all of our everydayers from the Himalayas coming back to listen to Cody and myself talk Texans again. I'm your Texans football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman. On the other side of the screen, Texans credential media member, Coach T. Davis. We got a lot to talk about today. It was a good day for the offense. You got CJ Stroud and Stefon Diggs on the same page, ripping it up. And I mean, damn good. So we'll talk about that. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. FanDuel is hooking up all customers all summer long with a boost or a bonus daily. There's something for everyone every day. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Cody, take us away.
Day 17 of training camp for your Houston Texans. Preseason game number 3 for your Houston Texans. And that's basically what we're going to get into on this Thursday installment of Locked On Texans. We're going to, of course, look at the top players, the top guys who definitely needs to show out and what we want to see in Saturday's preseason game against the New York Giants. But, John, of course, we're going to start off with the highlights of day 17. And for the second consecutive day, the Houston Texans had their entire offensive line: Laramie Tunsil, Kenyon Green, Juice Scruggs, Shaq Mason, and Titus Howard. And for the second consecutive day, this offense balled the heck out. Plain and simple. John, you already alluded to it.
When did we start saying heck?
I don't know. I just
don't even want to say Charlie heck.
Well, fine. For the second consecutive day, this offense balled the hell out. Plain and simple. And John, you already alluded to it, man. CJ Stroud and Stefon Diggs was out there literally showcasing why, revisiting a topic that we did a couple weeks ago at the start of training camp, why that could be one of the league's best duos in the league. But I do want to say this, John, because every day I see this debate on social media, sports talk shows, different people writing, who is and who can be the Houston Texans' number one wide receiver. John, we are literally entering a month.
We're talking about a hot day for the offense. This is a hot topic.
It's a hot topic, but let me tell you this. I'm sick of it. Because just like what I said at the start, I think it was mandatory minicamp, we first had an opportunity to see Nico and Stefon and Tank take the field for the very first time, all three of them together. This team does not have a wide receiver number one. On any particular day, it could be any one of those guys. And I said that because yesterday was arguably, if not one of the best training camp days that Stefon Diggs had. Caught several passes from CJ Stroud, I believe 2 touchdowns, and the man showcased why he has been one of this league best wide receivers over the past decade. But then I go back to what our colleagues had to say last week in Cleveland. I go back to what we saw in the preseason victory against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I go back to what we saw when Tank Dell went out there and still had an opportunity to create plays in double coverage and still go out there and create touchdown passes after touchdown passes and go out there and contort his body and still be the dynamic playmaker that he is. I look at that and I'm thinking to myself, okay, now you have 2. Then I also think back to the 6'4" guy who's been here since about 2021. And we saw some potential that last year he had an opportunity to record nearly 1,300 yards. And I say all that just to say, he also put on the show during the first 2 weeks of training camp himself. This team doesn't have a wide receiver number one. And it also goes back to what CJ Stroud said on the very first day of training camp. This is a 5-headed monster because not only do you have Tank, Nico, and Steph, you also have Joe Mixon, who is slowly but surely getting back to the player that he was prior to the injury. And you also have Dalton Schultz. John, this offense for the second consecutive day looked really good. Solid day for the defense as well. Azeez Elshire looked really good on the defensive side of the ball. But this offense, man, look, when all 5 of those offensive linemen are out there on the field, it seems like the possibilities of how good this offense could be is limitless.
It's a different game. It's a different beast when all 5 of those guys are out there. And I want to take a little swing over to Bobby Slowick and his comments at the post-press conference Wednesday afternoon. Talking about Cam Akers, it is easy to see Cam Akers is familiar with the outside zone scheme when he was in LA and Minnesota. They both did pretty similar to what we do. So there's not a lot of conversation with him that has to take place with how to run zone in general. We have had to talk about other run schemes we do. We ran gap. We ran a lot of other stuff that he has had to adjust to a little bit, but he wants to know it all. He's thirsty for knowledge, and he's asking the questions. And I wanted to kind of highlight that because, earlier this week, I talked about how it's unfair to judge Dameon Pearson. We've even highlighted the last couple of days, Dameon Pierce having big runs behind that left side of the ball now that Larry Tunsil, the offensive line, is back at practice and at its full capacity with the starters. But I got to give some love to Cam Akers today, guys. I mean, like I said a while back, when he was signed to Houston, has that familiarity with this offense, playing in LA, playing in Minnesota, in an outside zone run, and you can see it. He still has the ability to make people miss. He still has that very good one cut and go running style, and I do believe he's going to make this running back room interesting if he makes the roster. I'm still going to put an if on it because I haven't heard word that he's a for sure to make this team, but based off what we've seen, based off what we just heard from Bobby Slowick, and based off how he's practicing, he is one of those players that on the lowest of keys, he's been stacking some good days of practice. So that's always good to hear. But to the offense just being hot altogether, we got to highlight CJ Stroud and Stefon Diggs and that connection that those two have been growing with one another the moment Stefon stepped off that plane when he was traded here to Houston and finally showed up to practice with his team. I think it was, according to DJ Bieniemy, 2 TDs on the day for Stefon Diggs on between 5 to 6 targets and catches. He was just lighting it up. And there's a clip going around with the one-on-ones between Stefon and Kamari. Of course, that's a rookie. But you just see Stefon do a very good job of kind of selling the fade and back shoulder with the catch.
Now, to that point, though, I know you said that's just a rookie, but there has been moments where Kamari got the better of Stefon. That's why we look at him so highly. Right. Just want to throw that out there.
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
Kamari isn't your average rookie. Let's just put it like that.
It's good that Kamari, I think, is getting those reps when he's winning and when he's losing. It's only going to make him better. But just looking at the communication and the camaraderie and the chemistry between CJ Stroud and Stefon Diggs, and that's just between those two. The rest of the offense, I believe, will thrive off of that. Defensive coordinators will be up late night trying to figure out, okay, who do we stop right now? On any given Sunday, you can have, and I honestly believe that all 3 of those receivers are this team's true number one. Of course, you look at the hierarchy and say, well, at the end of the year, the targets matter, the yards matter, the TDs matter. But on any given Sunday, I think this receiving core has 3 guys that can lead this team in receptions, in targets, in catches. And that's dangerous. We're not even mentioning Joe Mixon as a running back. We're not even mentioning Dalton Schultz or the rest of that tight end room. And by the way, Cade Stover has been stacking together some damn good days at practice. I believe it was Monday. He caught a long TD pass from CJ Stroud. And that's what you want to see and hear from your rookie tight end who's getting acclimated to the NFL. So they got weapons all across the field, all across their depth chart. And CJ Stroud is this team's, quarterback and leader. But the chemistry between CJ and Stefon Diggs is what I'm seeing in terms of another hot day for this offense. They are ripping it up out there on the field, guys. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We got non-negotiables in our life that no matter what happens, we got to get it done. Cody, right now for me is really about making sure that I create 45 minutes a day to work out, whether that's in the garage, running, or going to the gym. 45 minutes a day I have to work out. What are some of your non-negotiable listeners and viewers? Is it never skipping the leg day, or is it therapy day? And when our schedules get packed with different activities, big work projects, and more, sometimes it is easy to let our priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever before. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's all about empowering yourself to be the best version of yourself so everybody else can get the better version of you, but more importantly, so you can feel confident about yourself and what you are doing. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suitable to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief, and I do mean very brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. You never skip a leg day. You never want to skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Thursday installment of Locked On Texans. And there were several highlights that took place during Wednesday's day 17 of training camp for your Houston Texans. John, one of my favorite moments of training camp was seeing CJ Stroud take the field with not just the first team, but the second team as well. Davis Mills did not practice on Wednesday. However, we did have an opportunity, to your point, John, to see CJ Stroud get some reps in with some of the other wide receivers. And one receiver that looked fairly good playing alongside CJ was John Mechie. He had an opportunity.
No, don't say that. Don't say that. Get him out of here. Get him out of here.
I'm just saying, man, he had an opportunity. It seemed like him and CJ Stroud had connected for about 15 to 20 yards doing 11-on-11 play, man. And once again, I like what I saw out of John Mechie. This is the first time that I saw John Mechie actually go out there and do something positive over at least the last 2 weeks. And John, that's going to lead us into what we want to see on Saturday. And for me, John, look, we just finished talking about, this team not having wide receiver number one. We just finished talking about how Nico, Tank, and Stefon could be wide receiver number one on any given day, on any given play, on any given down. But Saturday, sit those three down. We know what they are capable of. I want to see CJ take the field, get you about 2, maybe 3 offensive snaps in, with your wide receivers being Mechie, Xavier Hutchinson, Robert Woods, and Ben Skoranek. Why? Because I do believe those 4 guys are going to be in a heated battle over these next 2 weeks to see which 2 of these players is going to have an opportunity to establish themselves as wide receiver number 5 or 6 within this whole entire wide receiving group. And as of right now, after 2 preseason games, you have John Mechie, 2 catches for 11 yards, 4 targets. Xavier Hutchinson, 6 catches, 60 yards with 9 targets. Robert Woods, only 1 game, but balled out in that preseason victory against the Pittsburgh Steelers. 42 yards, 4 catches, 4 targets. Then you have Ben Skoranek, who balled out in the preseason opener in the loss against the Chicago Bears. So far in the first 2 preseason games, 3 catches, 28 yards, and 6 targets. I do believe whoever is going to have an opportunity to stand out and make a name for themselves come Saturday is definitely going to have an opportunity to not only make the 53-man roster, but actually have a real role within this offense, John. And the best way to do that, to your point, is to make sure you put them out there on the field with the guy that number 7, not the guy that 10, not the guy that 18, the guy that wears number 7.
Yeah, and I really think that that's important to see. I will say this: the chemistry between C.J. Stroud and John Mechie, guys, is absolutely there. And I know how fans feel. We got to see it. We got to see it. We got to see it. I'll say that I think C.J. Stroud trusts Mechie more than maybe a Davis Mills or maybe a Case Keenum, and he's more willing to give him the opportunities while he's out there quarterback compared to maybe a Mills who is maybe trying to solidify his role, so he's not taking as many risks. But on the flip side of that, because I definitely want to see John Mechie perform, he has to perform well. This is the third preseason game for the Houston Texans, and Brandon K. Scott made a point. You've made this point before. In that first game, he was absolutely forgettable. In that second game, I think it was more so for me at least like, okay, will you make this play? Will you make the most out of that opportunity? But the first game, I didn't even realize John Mitchell was on his roster. No disrespect to that young man. So you want to see him go out there and have a good showing. On the flip side, I want to see a player just get out there to play, and that's Kamari Lassiter. We haven't seen him play in any of the games this preseason to this point. Matt Burke talked about him, said he's come in with the mindset to compete, attack, sort of the aggressive mentality that we're looking for in those guys. He also ended off by saying he is all that. Whether it's well or not, I want to see Kamari Lassiter in a real-time game. This is, and Houston has sort of a little advantage compared to some of the other teams in the NFL right now, Houston and Chicago, because they've had 2 preseason games already. They're going to be on that third preseason game this week. They've had a better opportunity to evaluate some of these guys. But I think with Kamari, practice aside, camp aside, and he's been having a good camp and practice for a rookie, but against other talent, Kamari hasn't been evaluated compared to a Bullock. We've raved about Bullock on Wednesday show. Yes, right. We raved about him compared to the D line, compared to Eric Murray, compared to Blake Fisher, compared to Cade Stover. We've had more opportunities to see some of the other rookies other than Kamari Lassiter. So it's not really on a scale of will he do well or not. It's just seeing him out there. And yes, you want to see him do well. You want to see him make plays. You want to see how he can take out the opposing team's wide receiver. But I want to just see him out on the field, guys.
Another, and this one's easy because look, this is the first time we've seen all of them, take the field together over the last 2 days. But something that I really want to see, not really, perform well, because I think all 5 of those guys are going to do well. It's just the starting 5 going out there and getting real reps in a game, especially Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil, but more so Titus Howard. Just getting an opportunity to go out there, get back in game shape. Not sure if we're going to see Joe Mixon. He's been out there in practice over these last couple of days, but
question. Because do I want to see Joe Mixon? Yes. He was away for too long, and I think a carry or 2 would do good. But do I want to see more of Dameon Pierce behind that starting offensive line? Yes, because as I close out the first segment, looking at Cam Akers, will he make this roster? Will he make it competitive for RB2? I think that's a real conversation. But I don't think that conversation should really be had until we see Dameon Pierce behind that front 5 to give a true evaluation of what he can do for this team. He's already at a disadvantage, I believe, still having, still going through the learning process of learning this scheme and this zone run scheme. The advantage that he has is being in Houston the last 2 years, the team and the franchise and Nick Caserio seeing the talent. But I do think Saturday is one of those you put up or you shut up. And if you have 4 carries, may not be enough to judge you on in terms of carries. We should be able to judge you enough on the opportunities that you create, the plays that you make with those opportunities. So if we see 2 or 3 carries from Joe Mixon, I'm fine. But I want to see Dameon Pierce behind Laramie Tunsil, Kenyon Green, who's performed well this preseason, Juice Scruggs, those two have performed well with one another in terms of combo blocking, passing off blocks, and pass protection. They perform well. Shaq Mason and Titus Howard. And mainly behind Shaq Mason and Titus Howard. I don't want to see him run behind Chris Reed or Nick Broker anymore ever again. No, we're gonna dive into the YouTube comments on the other side of the break when we come back, guys. But first, it's important to let you guys know about the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Get daily insight to the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your fantasy league this year. That's why I'm getting some of my advice from. It's a little cheat code. So go ahead and make sure that you listen to the Locked On Fantasy Draft, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And FanDuel is hooking up all customers for the rest of the summer every day with a boost or a bonus daily. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Head on over to FanDuel right now. Start checking out some of these player props, man. NFL is around the corner. Make a bet that's so risky that you feel dirty about it at the end. Yeah, let's take it there. Let's get risque on FanDuel, but start making the most out of the rest of your summer. Again, they have daily bonuses for every and all customers every day for the rest of the summer. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the NFL. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. We are inside Texans training camp. Got I think a very good preseason game coming up in a couple of days. I hope to see fans out there tailgating. Let's kick it off early this year. Let's get crazy. But I think this game, third preseason game of the year, typically where we may see more of the starters, typically where we may see more of the players that we all consider impact players. And as we take a trip to the YouTube comments, my man Christopher Jackson, 1898. I hope that's not the year you were born, because if so, my friend, you are a vampire. But Pierce got to do it in the game. And you know what, Cody, I want to ask you this. You've seen more than I have. If Pierce doesn't get it done in a game this year,
a preseason game,
in a preseason game, this I'm not this year. I'm sorry, this Saturday, preseason game against the New York Giants, and we've all talked about how he can impact this team in special teams. But if he doesn't get it done as a running back this Saturday, should it be time for Houston to go ahead and say, you know what, we love the young man. We appreciate everything you've done for us in our dark days. Damian Pierce's rookie year is kind of like John Wall that bad year for Houston. We didn't win all the games, but John Wall averaged 27 and 7 or something like that. And we had a bright spot in him. Should it be time to move on if he doesn't get it done Saturday? Make the most of his opportunities. That's a thing for me in terms of evaluating Damian Pierce.
I'm gonna have to say yes. And the reason why I say yes, and trust me, it breaks my heart to say it, but you know, John, I just go back to our conversation that we had on Friday or Monday, whichever day it was, when we was talking about DP. And you know, you made a very reliable, a very good point. You know, that offensive line that Damian Pierce ran behind was god awful. Then he kept running to the right side. I don't know if they was working on something. No, this is a time where we'll see, coordinators, try to make their players do things that we clearly is not working to us, but they're trying to, figure out some things within their schemes and stuff to see whether or not it's going to be better for the regular season. And what was it? 4 carries, 4 yards. And once again, I understand how bad that offensive line was, but I also look back to how Cam Akers running behind that same, if not a weaker version of that offensive line, because I don't even think he took the field with Kenyon Green and Juice Scruggs, if I'm not mistaken, or Blake Fisher. I'm going to have to go back and see, but at least he gave the Texans something, and not once, but twice. And I look at it
Jordan
from
did too. I want to point that out there.
Gerard Jordan too.
Runs, and he's his own running back, and he fits the scheme. So it's not a lot of having to coach him up. I just want to throw that out there. I apologize.
No. You good. Which I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see how that little situation gonna play out with Gerard Jordan. But I just look at Jordan. I look at Cam Akers more so to say, and even Darrell Gumbawale, and I'm just thinking, it doesn't matter who was out there with the starting five. It doesn't matter who was out there with the offensive line. All three of those guys gave the Houston Texans something. And John, on Saturday, let's say for the sake of this argument, if Cam Akers go out there with Laramie Tunsil, Titus Howard, whatever the case might be, you're looking at a situation where his production could get even better. Gerard Jordan, his production could get even better. Darrell Gumbawale, his production could get even better. So, I mean, they have options, and I would have never imagined at the start of training camp, especially after that, what was that, day 3, day 4, when they signed Cam Akers, I would have never imagined us talking about the possibility of Cam Akers making this 53-man roster. And here we are, two more preseason games left, about what, 2 more weeks of training camp left, if that. Then you have the joint practice against the Los Angeles Rams next week.
It's tough.
It's tough, man. It's tough. I don't want to give up on the young man, but it's one of them situations. The Houston Texans are not in a position where it was 2 years ago or even last year at this time. They're competing for a championship, and you heard Coach D'Amico and General Manager Nick Caserio talk about it. They're going to play the best. They're going to have the best 53 men out there. And if you're not on that 53-man roster, they're also going to make sure that they utilize and put the best 16 players on that practice squad roster to just in case if for emergency purposes. And, you know, man, it sucks, man. I really hate this for DP as of right now. Just go out there and ball out Saturday. You won't have these issues.
Yeah. And I'm looking at a lot of comments here, and a lot of people kind of feel like, you know, for DP, it's just not clicking for this team anymore. I mean, I'm looking at he needs to, you know, maybe he needs to play a whole half. And this is actually from Christopher Jackson, who we highlighted his comment, or, you know, I think DP is just one of those players where maybe people are emotionally tied to him, and you got those players you just want to see do good.
Mm-hmm.
DP is that guy. Very infectious personality, excuse me. And we go back to some of the plays he made his rookie year, we all feel like it's still there. But Saturday is the game to show it. And it's either you poop or get off the pot, the cleanest way I could say it. Also looking at NT Yo 000, the offensive line was trash. The Texans' offensive line is the worst in the NFL. CJ Stroud will not have the season he had last year because of the offensive line. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't trust the offensive line. Howard already injured. He's a waste of money. I think that's unfair simply because based off of what you guys have seen, and this is not a shot at anybody, but when we're seeing this offensive line somewhat healthy at practice, excluding Laramie Tunsil, who didn't practice the first 3 weeks of training camp, they were able to protect CJ. They were able to move the ball. And so as we look at Dameon Pierce needing to have a good game Saturday, I want to look at this offensive line and the starters and that right side, because I really do trust Laramie Tunsil, and I'm coming around to trusting Kenyon Green more and more and more, which is a good sign. But that offensive line has to perform well. Shaq Mason and Titus Howard, they got to make sure that they are holding up their end of the bargain. Am I right or wrong on that?
No, you're 100% correct, man. And, you know, I really don't get that comment too much talking about this offensive line is the worst in the NFL. I mean, maybe you can say worse as in trust, because with Laramie Tunsil knees, with Titus Howard's injury woes over the last couple of matter of fact, the past year, even with the injury scare he had a week ago to this recording. Even when you take a look at Kenyon Green, I mean, yes, he looked good, but we still haven't seen him 100% healthy. Juice Scruggs missed half of his rookie season. Like maybe that's what it was going with that. But look, if this offensive line stays healthy, I've said this again. I said this before and I say it again, man. This offensive line has an opportunity to be one of the best in the league, and it's definitely going to be on a par where CJ Stroud can not only give you the production that he gave you last year, but it's going to be 10 times better. And like I said, maybe it's the health thing that they're probably concerned about. I'm not sure, but this offensive line is nowhere near the worst in the league unless you're rolling out there with Nick Broker and
let me say
Jared Patterson. If that's the case, throwing the towel for the season, just let Davis Mills play for the rest of the year.
I'm a fan of a franchise up north that I believe has the worst offensive line in the NFL. But speaking of up north, Clayton Bigsby 397. Cody, you're gonna love this. You ready?
Yeah.
The Detroit Pistons, dog. That sorry ass franchise. You serious? Listen, I'm gonna tell you right now, Cody ready to leave, y'all.
I'm not. I'm not.
Just saying,
it just hurt me. It just hurt me because I think this is the last recording I'm going to do in my humble home in Houston, in my room, man. Next time y'all see me, gonna definitely have a different setup. Maybe, not sure yet. But yeah, man, it's an exciting but sad time. I would say to that comment, that's the only thing that hurt because you guys know I cover both the Houston Rockets and the Houston Texans during the dog days of their rebuild, and right when it seems like the Rockets gonna be a playoff team, Texans gonna be a Super Bowl contending team, I get an opportunity to go out there and to Detroit and cover another team where it seemed like their rebuild is worse than the two that I just finished doing. So I don't know.
Cody was the voodoo to Houston sports. So expect a championship soon, guys. Thank you for watching and listening to today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. And you guys have been wonderful following the show for a very long time. Please be sure to follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, it's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.